When I got shingles, I also got very, very lucky. Much luckier, in fact, than many people who get shingles, and especially my poor brother who had it for 8 long months. He suffered terribly, but he also found out how to make sure it never happened again, which is what helped me when I got it. As a result, my shingles came and went quickly with almost no discomfort. I suffered none of its common complications, and unlike many other people, I believe I'm unlikely to ever have it again. But let me quickly get to the point here because time is of the essence. If you have shingles now, it's vital you act quickly if you're to be sure that this unpleasant illness doesn't turn into a years-long disaster. So my brother was 58 when he first got shingles. He was a tough guy, worked in construction, fit, strong, good-humored. But after 4 days of shingles, he had faded to a shadow of himself. I'd never heard of the illness at that time, but I saw firsthand what it can do to a person. My brother described so vividly the unbearable itching, the skin so sensitive that he couldn't even let his clothes touch it, that I could almost feel my own skin tingling. He wasn't sleeping. There was no comfortable position for him. The intense itching, the hot pain, and chronic tiredness was grinding him down. He was worn out, miserable, and struggling to just get through the day. He couldn't work, so he couldn't earn. He applied creams and ice packs as per his doctor's instructions, but improvement was slow and frustrating. But here's where it got really bad for my brother. After 3 weeks, the scabs across his body were finally drying up and starting to heal. We all believed his shingles was finally healing itself. Yet while the itching had reduced, for some reason he was still in a lot of pain. His doctor was concerned, but told him he'd have to wait and see how things played out. They didn't play out well at all, because for more than 8 months after the final shingles scab had cleared, my brother experienced searing pain every single day. There was little let-up and only limited relief from painkillers. Those months were, to put it bluntly, absolute hell for him. He experienced savage pain day after day for nearly 250 days in a row. It was with him on his birthday, his wedding anniversary, Thanksgiving, throughout all of Christmas and well into the new year. And yet, as we later discovered, his 8 months of suffering is not uncommon. This is why his doctor had been worried. There's a name for this specific affliction, post-herpetic neuralgia, or PHN for short. Post-herpetic neuralgia, PHN, is the single most common complication of shingles. It's absolute agony. Most sufferers agree that it is easily worse than the shingles that led to it. PHN is constant, unrelenting, searing nerve pain. You can do almost nothing to get comfort. My brother is 6 feet tall, 185 pounds of mostly muscle, and he's worked in some of the toughest working conditions known, and smiled and laughed his way through it all. Yet all the while he had this PHN, I often saw tears in his eyes. It was that awful. Not in a million years could I ever imagine my brother crying, and yet there he was. The initial shingles attack, while deeply unpleasant, was a cakewalk compared to the horrors of PHN. My brother's PHN ended after 8 months, possibly only because of something he did about a week before it ended. And this is something you'd really want to know about, and I'll explain it in a second. But when the PHN did clear up, we thought this whole horrible business was finally over. What else could happen now? Something else did happen. Just when you think you're in the clear. 11 months later, my brother had shingles again. We looked at him as he told us the news, and we were totally lost for words. That didn't matter, though, because he had something to say to us. He told us, this time it's going to be different. This time he was going to save himself from the misery of everything that had happened before. First, that afternoon he went to the doctor. My brother respected doctor's knowledge, even though it hadn't helped him last time. But second, and this was where things would be different this time, he was going to take matters into his own hands, too. His first experience of post-herpetic neuralgia, PHN, had been awful. Doctors had been unable to help, and he had just had to wait it out. As the pain and exhaustion had worn him down, he'd looked for other ways of addressing the misery. and he got hold of a shingles treatment program from a natural health practitioner called Julissa Clay. Julissa's program was called the Shingle Solution. The Shingle Solution has a very solid reputation and tens of thousands of delighted followers. Julissa Clay herself is a celebrated and highly respected natural health practitioner who specializes in resolving some of the world's worst illnesses. My brother isn't really into natural remedies, but he'd been in that much pain he was willing to step outside the box in search of something to end the misery. One problem, he'd got hold of the program way too late. He'd had painful PHM for more than 7 months at that point. Ideally, you start to follow the program's guidance in the first days of shingles while you've still got the scabs and itching, not 7 months later when shingles is a distant memory and you're in daily agony with PHN. But the pain wasn't letting up, so he just did everything the program told him to do. Incredibly, just about a week later, the PHN had melted away. It had faded from about the 3rd day and disappeared completely by the 8th. My brother was disbelieving, relieved, grateful. His doctor was happy for him, but couldn't explain it. She admitted some natural remedies do work very well where medicine had failed. But now, 11 months later, here he was at the start of a second attack of shingles, and if my brother knew anything, he knew he wasn't going to go through PHN again. Confession time. He told us something, though, that we didn't know. He said that this program had been easy to follow, and clearly it worked, but once his PHN cleared, he'd not bothered to keep up with its simple instructions. And that mattered a lot. Why? Because one of the program's strongest benefits was that it not only resolved itching and pain during shingles, it not only avoided PHN after shingles, it also took away the causes of shingles ever occurring again.